Welcome to episode 15 of Handy at the Shandy, a Las Vegas podcast. And you all know that 15 is divisible by 3. And so that means that I, TGJames, will be quarterbacking this episode along with my trusty sidekicks, Boring Jack and Adam the Fraud. It's going to be a good hour one. We're going to talk about some low-cost carriers, because this is an airline podcast now, along with some best breakfast places, and possibly talk about positive EV gambling or negative EV gambling for entertainment.
Question mark?
We're going to see how it is. It is snowing right now here in Pennsylvania. We were supposed to only get a dusting. And I know both of you are in areas of the country where the weather is not the greatest. So how crappy is it over there in the Midwest?
It's going to be -8 as the high on Friday. So I've got a lot of good plans this weekend to do nothing and stay indoors.
Do you not do your walk when it's that cold? Like, is there a limit that you don't go and do your walk?
That would certainly be outside the limit. But yeah, it's more a me thing than a temperature thing. Like, you can always just put on more clothes. That's the great part about living where it's cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, the weather's going to be the same here. I'm going to spend the whole weekend worried about the outdoor cat that lives near our house because I've taken to loving it. It's just this feral cat, but it hangs out on our patio. And we have to tell people when they come over, like, listen, that's not our cat. We don't, that's the reason why it's not inside. It's like freezing out. People are like, do you have a cat? We're like, that's not our cat. We don't know whose cat that is, but we feed it occasionally. And every time it gets below 0, I worry desperately about this cat that we have kind of fake adopted that hangs out on our porch.
You should let the cat in when it's cold.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good idea, but this cat has survived probably way worse. It's probably 5 or 6 years old now and survived every year, but I still have this weird fear that we're going to lose it at some point, even though it's not mine. I have no idea whose it is. It just hangs out most of the day.
You're just going to open the door this weekend. It's just frozen.
It probably will. It'll probably come in if I open the door.
We're supposed to get a lot of that snow coming in this weekend, so I will not be doing much this weekend either. Well, with the weather out of the way.
In other news out of the Midwest.
That's not how I was going to segue.
Transition.
I was going to say, speaking of things in the air.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, we got that news recently that Allegiant is buying or has bought, I'm not sure, Sun Country. And Jack texted us and was like, hey, I didn't really see this happening, but let's talk about it. So let's talk about it.
We got a litany of texts about this that I was not prepared for. I
was totally not prepared for it.
I don't know what. I think I got out of the shower or something, and there's like 15 texts about Sun Country. And I'm like,
I mean, Allegiant Airlines, if you're a Vegas goer, is most famous for being an airline that's headquartered in Las Vegas and has their name on the stadium. I guess that would be what people actually know it from if they're not taking the flights. But it's Vegas's hometown airline, and I figured we could talk about it a little, especially because they just purchased my hometown airline, Sun Country, based out of Minneapolis. I mean, not that there's that much to talk about here. They're kind of both small, low-cost carrier airlines. But I think Vegas is kind of a unique destination for some of these low-cost carriers like Frontier and Spirit, Allegiant, that they're going to do a brisk business there because it's so much leisure travel.
Mm-hmm. Have either of you flown Allegiant recently or ever?
No, we don't. I mean, we don't have them here in Minneapolis to my knowledge. So
I've never flown Allegiant or Spirit. I have flown Frontier. They saved me when American Airlines failed one day. And Frontier was fantastic. It was like a brand new plane. You could pay the extra fee to have a row to yourself at that time. So you basically got the middle seat. I mean, obviously you could sit wherever you wanted in that particular row. I think it was like an extra $65. And I was like, yeah, sure. Let's do that. It was like in one of the first 2 rows. So that was one of the few times where I appreciated having kind of an extra charge that I could take advantage of.
I have flown Spirit before to Vegas. And not only was it a crowd kind of people that are not going to Vegas on business, right? Because they're all on fucking Spirit. But the staff were very aware of Spirit's reputation and made sure to lean into it in terms of their announcements and things of that nature. I thought that was kind of fun. But I feel like the airline industry kind of feels a lot like picking a hotel in Las Vegas, where in some sense the product that all the different strip hotels are selling you is similar. You can change one out for the other. Like if you were going to Vegas for the weekend, getting a room at Excalibur does do a lot of the same things that getting a room at New York would do for you.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of ways it doesn't. And so I think kind of given that we're all people that tend to pay extra one way or another to stay at nicer places.
Well, I see like some of the options at these like lower end hotels as being similar to some of the upcharges that you can get on like a Spirit. Like for example, I would stay at Luxor in their 1-bedroom tower suite. I think it's vastly underrated. It's under $200 most night. It's a lot of space. So I feel like that's the big front seat that I don't know if you can anymore, but that you used to be able to get on a Spirit flight and pay that extra charge. I don't know if it comes with combos at the Luxor suite, but probably have to pay extra for those too. But I think, there's, like you said, there's opportunities there to do it well or to do it comfortably. But again, that's coming from someone who's only flown one of them one time.
Do you think that could work in the hospitality industry? Kind of like, because when I started learning about these low-cost carriers, my first thought was like, oh, they're all about nickel and diming you and charging you all these little fees for everything. And that's how they get you. And that sucks and I don't like it. And then I've since completely reversed on that, where it's like, oh no, their whole goal is to make it so that you only pay for what you use. And if you don't want it or it's not worth the price, then they'll still sell you a cheap ticket to get from point A to point B. And I wonder, like, is there any way Vegas could make that work in the hospitality industry? Because everyone's all up in arms about like, oh, all these fees in Vegas and all this stuff. Like, can Vegas do this better and make it so that people feel like they're saving money by not paying these upcharges as opposed to the other way around?
The only way I was thinking of that was like the optional resort fees that happen. Like, does Wynn have it, or is it Treasure Island, like one of them where it's like you don't have to pay it, but you're just not getting access to like the free Wi-Fi and the gym or something like that?
That's the issue with the resort fee in most cases, right? Is that it doesn't actually get you anything.
Right.
And so if you were to opt not to pay it, then they can't actually take anything away from you. You can't like, oh, yeah, free local calls or
right.
a copy of the newspaper.
Just on the John using that phone, which I think Mandalay Bay still has them in the bathroom. I don't know. It's been a while.
I feel like Venetian might still have them in the bathroom. But.
Yeah.
I think it would be tough for the hotel industry to do that. Because what are you going to say? Like, oh, well, if you don't want pillows, right? Like, what are you going to, what are these amenities that you're saying are going to like add on to it? Like housekeeping? I guess they kind of they do that sometimes. Yeah.
I think room service is really the only thing that kind of compares, where they really charge you an arm and a leg for room service at these hotels, but you don't feel compelled to buy it. Like most people aren't going to pay for it and they know it's a big upcharge, but.
Do you think people are more forgiving now of the low-cost carriers? Like they've just come to accept it? Because I still feel like in Vegas, people are really, really upset about the perceived and real nickel and diming that's happening, like these upcharges and things getting more expensive, where I feel like people have started to kind of just accept Spirit and some of these low-cost carriers for what they are. Right. And I've seen people who like really champion them. It's like, hey, I pack light. I can get to where I want to go for like $30-$40 sometimes, and that's all I need because it's a short flight. And I think if that were me and it wasn't 4 hours, I'd probably be more apt to do it. But it feels like people are more forgiving of these carriers and have just kind of come to accept it.
Well, I think they would have to do that for hotels too. Like, let's say if Luxor or New York or whatever, right? They stopped including internet. But like everyone expects there to be internet in your hotel room. But if they just said, hey, we're going to you pay for everything, but your room's $15 no matter what, like, and then you could start adding these things on, there would be some backlash to begin with, like for X number of months / years. But at some point, if someone's stuck to it, then maybe people be like, you know what? I have unlimited data on my phone. I don't need Wi-Fi. I will go to that place so I don't have to pay the $20 a night for Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm. I only need 2 pillows.
I only need 2 pillows or a mini fridge, right? Isn't like a lot of places there aren't any mini fridges, but you can call down and they'll like bring you one for $35 a night.
Yeah. Okay.
Or you get the people who say they have a medical condition, even though they don't, and they get it for free.
Yeah.
I think we just need people to just think a little more outside the box. Like maybe 20 years ago, it would have seemed crazy to say that neither your carry-on nor your checked bag is available without paying for it. Mm-hmm. So maybe we have to just reach further. Like you can bring your sleeping bag to this room, but there's not going to be a bed or a cot unless you pay. Like I think maybe we're just not reaching far enough.
There's no actual hotel, you're just outside. You're in
just
the
staying at a
lot.
shelter. Yeah.
I mean, I do remember one time when I was in Vegas many years ago, I had one of the rooms at the Imperial Palace that opened up like into the parking garage. Like it was the door
It was like
went
a motel
outside.
room.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was a motel room
When it flooded, they made you open the window. Like the water's got to pass through here, so you're just gonna bear with us.
I would fly Allegiant or Spirit or any of those airlines more often to Vegas on like a short trip, even though it would be a long flight from the East Coast, if it was available to me. There's only a United and American. Delta used to, not anymore, flying out of state college. So I've thought about, should I just drive over to Pittsburgh and jump on one of these low cost carriers direct to Vegas? But then when I do the pricing out, I'm like, no, it's really not that much cheaper. I did fly it once from upstate New York, Plattsburgh, New York, when I lived up there about 15 years ago. They, for one summer only, had a direct flight from Plattsburgh, New York, one of the smallest airports in the entire damn country, to Vegas. And my buddies and I jumped on that a couple times that summer, which is pretty cool. But other than that, no, I am very loyal right now to United, and that's where all of my miles go through. So I just stick there.
Yeah, well, congrats or sorry to anyone affected by this news.
Yeah. I didn't even know Sun Country was like a real airline. I'm sorry, I'm keeping this going, people. I did not know. But Jack, I get it. You're from Minneapolis. I guess it's a Minneapolis base. Only time was when I get these mailers from Caesars. That's like, there's a junket going out of Latrobe, Pennsylvania to Laughlin. Sun Country.
They do a lot. They do the MGM junkets as well.
Okay.
When I went to Biloxi that one time in 2023, I managed to fly Sun Country commercial to Biloxi. They get few enough flights in Biloxi that like the Uber drivers know when flights are coming in and are like, oh, well, that one's a junket, so we don't even need to go to the airport because no one's going to be calling for an Uber. They're all going to be getting like their junket bus or whatever.
What time did you get into Biloxi when you flew there?
No, we're not allowed to talk about other.
This is what people want to know. Mm-hmm.
I was trying to segue to our next topic.
Did you make it in time for breakfast?
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
This is a terrible segue.
Well, it was terrible because you ruined it. But our next segment...
Do they serve breakfast on Spirit Airlines?
They do not. But you know where they do serve breakfast? In Las Vegas. This is a new segment we are starting this week, and we'll probably bring it back multiple times. It's called Best Breakfast Places, and Jack isn't allowed to say Bouchon.
I'm not allowed to say...
Nope, you're not allowed to say Bouchon. By the way, when I read this, I told Kim that this was going to be the name of a segment, and she laughed out loud. But as we've already talked about, Kim laughs out loud at a lot of things that I say. So this was going around our text messages and a few text messages with some other folks about getting breakfast in Vegas. I am not necessarily a huge breakfast fan. When I'm in Vegas, I would rather wake up, go gambling at like 6 a.m.
And that's it.
I'll get my caffeine, Red Bull or whatever. And then I like to get something really small, maybe one of the smoothies at the smoothie place at Cosmo, or there's some really good acai bowls on the walk between Cosmo and Bellagio. There's a nice little spot there. Something that's really light and will just kind of get me through until closer to lunchtime, and then have a bigger lunch and then a later dinner. That's like my preferred day of meals in Vegas, but I know that's not what the two of you like. So Jack, you were very adamant about wanting to talk about breakfast places and not saying Bouchon. So what are places that you've been or liked?
I mean, I think that's one of the fun things about breakfast is that there's so many different ways you can go with it. And so as a result, Vegas tends to cater to a lot of those different ways to go to it, especially because in Vegas, people wake up at just all sorts of insane times, right? Yeah, you can do big, extravagant like brunches 7 days a week in Vegas, or you can just get something that's like grab and go.
Yeah.
And a lot of places have tried to be kind of an upscale grab and go place. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is something more like Egg Slut or Suns Out, Buns Out that are trying to be like the fancy, fried egg sandwich place. But even stuff like the proliferation of the Dominique Ansel Bakery. It's like, oh, where can I get something that's quick and I can take it to eat wherever, but also it's fancy and it's Vegas-y and it's celebrity-y and stuff like that. And so I think it's really interesting to watch them try to appeal to these different markets, especially when there's almost no overlap between any of these breakfast restaurants we're going to talk about and places that are actually open for dinner in Vegas.
Have you ever done any of the poolside breakfast spots? Because I have not, but I hear a lot of people like to do that. I'm also not a pool person. Really not an outdoor person when it comes to Vegas. Let's be real.
I haven't done any of the pool ones, no. The outdoor ones I know people do. I like Tableau at Wynn. People really enjoy. I don't think I've done Tableau, but no, I'm not an outdoor breakfast person in Vegas because it just gets too hot too early most of the times when I'm visiting. I will say, though, probably not represented on this list because I like to ease into the day and I'm okay not leaving my room if I'm in a nice room for a while. So I feel like room service, although expensive to me, is worth it. Of like when I'm just waking up, I'm groggy, I'll call down, make my order, do it online, whatever. So that as I'm like kind of getting into the day, like the food's there, I'd have my coffee, relax, watch the fountains, whatever. Like to me, that's like perfect way to start the day.
I think breakfast is the perfect time to do room service.
Absolutely.
You're just not like you have to sit around and wait for your food. It's like you're not missing out on anything. You can shower, you can wake up, you can do all that stuff. Whereas like, yeah, let's say it's 6 p.m. and you're like, oh, I'm going to go get room service for dinner and then like go back to my room and wait a while. Like there's kind of logistical concerns about getting room service other times of the day that just don't show up in the morning. So yeah, I've probably gotten room service like 4 or 5 times in Vegas ever. And probably like 3 or 4 of those are breakfast.
Now you were talking about Tableau at Wynn. Terrace Point Cafe is probably the place that I've been to the most.
Oh, see, for me, it's Chardon. They've got those 3 different breakfast spots. And
no, because when you mentioned this, I was thinking of, well, where have I actually been to sit down and get breakfast? And it used to be every time I was at Wynn, one of the days I would go over to Terrace Point Cafe because I felt like the price was reasonable for a Wynn restaurant, which can be what you think it is. It's still expensive, but reasonable, sit down, nice. I enjoyed it. But again, I'd rather pay less money, go to the grab and go place right at the bottom of the hotel elevators at Wynn, grab a breakfast sandwich and a drink for, $20 and get on my way.
Well, one thing that's the opposite of that is really prevalent in Vegas, and I'm thinking of trying to do more of, and because kind of like you're saying, I do different meals at different times in Vegas. Like some days I do want to have like a big lunch, and like we've talked about before, sometimes I want to get like steak and potatoes for lunch, or sometimes I want to skip lunch because I had a huge breakfast or stuff like that. So I don't do like any 2 days in Vegas exactly the same when it comes to meal times, I don't think. But one thing that I've not really done much of is like breakfast buffets, or even more breakfast all-you-can-eats that aren't buffets. And those are starting to pop up a lot. I think for buffets, there's really 3 notable buffets in Vegas that people agree are kind of like the top tier. And that would be the Wicked Spoon that we talk about all the time at Cosmo.
The Wicked Spoon.
Bacchanal Buffet at Caesar's Palace, and then Wynn's Buffet. If you have an honorable mention for a buffet that you think it's not enough talk in Vegas, I'm willing to hear it. But those are the 3 I always hear about.
There is a buffet called All You Can Eat. So that kind of covers both at Palms. So, but yeah, I've never been there, but I just want to put that out there.
But so, yeah, of those 3, only Cosmo and Wynn do any breakfast or brunch. Like Caesar's doesn't even open until the afternoon. And so for all you can eat stuff, yeah, you can get some fancy breakfast at a couple spots, but there are a bunch of all you can eat deals where you order at the table, but it's off like an all you can eat menu and they just bring you items until you are satisfied. I found a couple that I wanted to note kind of across different cuisines and price points. First one here, both Guy Fieri restaurants at Caesar's properties. There's one at the Horseshoe, kind of at his like sports bar restaurant, and then the like more flagship Guy Fieri place at the Link. They both have all you can eat breakfast deals. The Horseshoe one, I think, runs 7 days a week and is $20 for all you can eat breakfast. Wow. And the Link one is $25. It only runs Monday to Friday. But, like James is saying, a coffee and an egg sandwich, grab and go style, can be $20 at a lot of places. I think checking out a Guy Fieri place for breakfast could be a good idea, especially if you have a big enough group that you get to try a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Should we try to plan one of those on the big 40th birthday trip out in March? Maybe we'll go to some Guy Fieri across the street at Horseshoe.
I dare you to plan that. Put it on the itinerary and make us all do it.
It is
It's on
planned
now
because you said that.
What a dare.
What a dare.
Another one that I saw from watching vlogs on YouTube, again, shout out to the Coin Show, is they did brunch at Planet Hollywood at the new Italian restaurant there that I've not been to called Caramella. And on the weekend, Saturdays and Sundays only, they have a $55 all-you-can-eat. And the thing I'll say about that is that a lot of these all-you-can-eat places, the thing you have to be wary of is like the upcharges for certain items, where you're like, oh, there's like this one thing that's like fancier and it'll be like an extra $8. Or another thing here, and that'll be like an extra $9 or stuff like that.
It's like Spirit Airlines.
Ooh,
good
throw, good callback.
Pay for what you want.
You're welcome.
I feel like that's almost always a trap where you're like forgetting that everything else is already paid for. It's you're like, oh, this thing, it's only like $9. I might as well get that. That's like not very expensive, but you forget that you've already paid for like this whole other section of the menu where you don't have to pay any like additional upcharge.
Well, as the economist on the
Here we go.
on the committee here, that you already paid is a sunk cost. So you actually should not be worried about the money you've already paid. You should only worry about the marginal additional cost of that extra thing. Like if there is item X on the menu that's $8 more and you're getting more than $8 in benefit from ordering that thing, you should order that thing. That would be a rational choice.
Right. But you have to understand that there's opportunity cost in that you could have ordered something that's free and eaten that. And so it has to be $8 better than the free things on the menu and not just be something you'd be willing to pay $8 for. And
well, if you're a rational actor, then your marginal cost is already taking into account all opportunity costs. So
Okay,
yeah.
I'm going to leave for a bit. You guys tell me when you need me, okay?
Last one I'd be really interested in trying is Mott 32, the kind of like fine dining Chinese restaurant at Palazzo.
Oh, they have one. That's interesting.
They do a $68 dim sum brunch. Saturdays and Sundays only. That's all you can eat. And that looks really enticing. I would consider that at some point.
Yeah, I'm not usually I'm not a big breakfast person to begin with. So it's actually tough for me to want to spend that much money unless it's really good. Like when we went to Wicked Spoon, like, yes, that was good. And I had a bunch of really good little dishes, but to justify that cost, it's got to be something that I really want to do in that moment. Like I can justify the simplicity of room service and the convenience of it, but like walking down to Wicked Spoon, not having a +1 to split it with, and you guys making fun of me, that just wasn't worth the cost to me overall, even though it was pretty good. So I think it has to be good food, quite good to make me want to spend that much. I think that one probably could work. I really like Zen Kitchen at Waldorf Astoria. So like if I'm going to spend that much, like having a really good steak and eggs to me was like, oh, that's perfect. Like what a way to start the day. I could skip lunch if I needed to or wanted to. If I'm going to spend that much, like I don't want flapjacks and some hash browns. You know what I mean? Like I want, even if it's all you can eat, because I can't eat that much, I want something pretty good. So all I'm saying is Guy Fieri sounds really enticing right now.
We are totally going to Guy Fieri.
It's just going to be the lunch menu. It's just like, here's your nachos and cheeseburger.
But if you can get all you can eat nachos for $20, who says no?
I'm not saying no.
My problem with I don't want to eat a lot of food early in the day. And then when I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm going to this buffet. And if I'm going to be spending this much now at 10 a.m., I don't want to eat again till dinner. So then I stuff myself like an idiot. And then I feel like shit for a couple hours.
Yeah, that's not very economical of you.
It's not very economical. Yeah. I never said I was a rational actor, Jack. Does anyone else have anything to say about breakfast or break fast, if you will?
No, I'll say one honorable mention I have is Siddell's. They have a takeaway menu at Bellagio. I like Siddell's a lot, but it gets
so hard to get into.
Yeah, it gets so crowded. But if you have a room at Bellagio, they do have a little like takeaway stand where you can order from the stand. It does take a bit, probably takes 15, 20 minutes, but you can go mosey around for a bit, come back, and they'll have your order ready. And I did that a few trips ago, just took it back up to the suite and hung out and watched like a early football game.
That's a great tip. My tip was going to be have a friend who has a platinum card with MGM, but
well, not all of us have friends that are big gamblers.
No, not all of us have friends.
That's true. Speaking of gambling, since this is a gambling podcast,
This segue is, I'm going to say this is the number one segue of the show so far. Speaking of gambling,
I sent you both a text. I was at the gym. No brag intended.
Whoa.
Just getting my pump on.
It's showing. People can't see at home, but
yeah, thanks. I did decide to record today without a shirt on, so I appreciate the shout out. I was just, lifting some weights and thinking.
Two things you're exceedingly good at.
I'm so good. I'm so good at both of them. Mainly what I'm going to say here is that I was listening to the news, because that's how much of a loser I am, is that I listen to NPR's Up First while I'm lifting weights. And they're going over some of the recent sports gambling scandals. And it got me thinking about, like, when people get into gambling, do they need to think they can beat the games for them to get really interested? Like, they really need to believe it's positive EV, because then they say, ooh, I'm really going to get into this because I can make money doing it. Think of like sports betting or poker. Like when I first started getting into gambling, a lot of it was because of poker. Then it was into like blackjack, of like, ooh, I can count these cards and maybe I can get a positive EV play. And then it finally morphed into, that's a lot of fucking work, so I'm just going to do it as entertainment. And I just wasn't sure what you all thought about that. Like, when you both first got into gambling and gaming in general, did it come through that lens first of like, ooh, I can do sports betting and now I can beat this? Or, ooh, it's going to be, I'm going to be a poker player and I can beat it. And then you were like, well, I guess I'll just do this for entertainment. What do you guys think?
I mean, I absolutely followed that exact same path. Like when I got into poker, I was like, well, casino games are for idiots who don't know the math, and poker is for us sophisticated intellectuals and blah, blah, blah. And
sophisticated and poker players definitely go hand in hand.
So much.
Right. And that's what made me realize that I enjoyed gambling almost kind of per se, and that it didn't need for it to be something that I could like treat cerebrally and have an edge at, or something for me to enjoy gambling.
Yeah. Gambling's always been weird to me. It's never really scratched an itch that needed itching. Does that make sense? Like, I've never really... Gambling, I can actually at times really take or leave. I just like the atmosphere. I kind of grew up in a house that had fun, like celebrated like gambling and casino culture. I lived with my grandparents for a while, and they went to Vegas all the time. And so I just kind of liked it. And I just liked the vibe that Vegas had. And I always say, and I've told this story many times, that the best thing that ever happened to me was my first experience gambling in Las Vegas. I got just absolutely kicked in the teeth, which was great. And that really set a tone for me of like, okay, yeah, it's not winnable. My expectations should remain as low as possible while still trying to have fun. It was a fun session. It was like a $5 blackjack session at Luxor. It was great. But, I think some people don't have that experience or lured into this idea, James. And I think that's definitely true right now with the younger generations with the proliferation of online sports betting and social media being what it is now. Like, I didn't have social media much when I was younger. We didn't have online sports betting. So I wasn't constantly seeing people win or bragging about it. And it wasn't as pervasive back then, where I'm seeing that now.
I feel like by the time I learned about sports betting, I already knew that it was like, there's a house edge. You're not going to beat it. You're not sharp enough. You're not smarter than the Vegas line. The house always wins. Mm-hmm. Like, all those adages about sports betting were also deeply ingrained in me by the time I learned that like betting on sports was like a thing. Because like you said, when I was coming of age, it wasn't in 50 states, it was in one. Mm-hmm. And so I can see where that would be like kind of an alluring entry point if you hadn't had it all beaten into you by that point.
And like you said, with the social media stuff, like, people aren't posting their losses. They're just like, look, I bet $1,000 on Indiana to win the national championship and I won $200,000. It's like, yeah, but how many other thousands of dollars were you betting on other long shots to try and win? Like, that's not going to be posted. So I see a lot of my college students, they'll come in, they'll talk about sports betting and they're like, oh, did you see this? Did you see this? Or I bet on this, I bet on that. And that just wasn't me at that time. And I don't know, like, and the reason I think I kind of got to this conversation in my head and then with you guys is, if it starts to come out more and more that a lot of these games are fixed, and if people are getting in trouble for it and it's just continually in the media, is there going to come a point where the casual gambler, let's say sports bettor, early age sports bettor, is going to be like, well, if they're fixing all these games, it doesn't matter what I do. So now I can't beat this, and they're going to lose interest early on. I don't think that's the case, but I could see how someone could get there.
Oh, I always love the argument of like, I knew this was going to happen. This game is fixed. Like, well, if you knew it was going to happen, then bet the other side because you lost, yet you knew that something else was going to happen.
I think that's a really good point, though, James, that people like sports betting because you can see how you could beat it. Like, for people to come up with a system to beat roulette, they have to come up with like a weird betting system or something like that they think might work. But if you're just trying to come up with a harebrained way of beating sports betting, the only thing you have to convince yourself is that like the Rams are a good football team and they're going to win by 5 when the line's like 3.5.
Okay, we don't need to talk about that right now.
I didn't
As a Chicago fan.
I didn't even try to do that. But I think the point is that you can make a very simple, convincing argument as to why your sports bet might be plus EV, whereas it's much harder to lure yourself into that in other areas.
And you can convince yourself in poker that I'm a better poker player than these other people who are around this table. And then you hear like, oh yeah, like you could beat it, which you definitely can. But if let's say all the social media stuff around was like, you can only play poker in the casino and the rake is this high. And so now you've got to do this. And like all the talk was just about how like, no, actually you're still going to end up losing. Even no matter how good you are, most likely you're still going to lose because everything's against you. You know, there might be less people that actually get into the, getting the gambling to begin with.
And I like the point about, the match being fixed and being like, oh, I knew it or whatever. I think it's funny because if the match is fixed, it doesn't actually affect a casual bettor because if you don't know in which way it's fixed, it doesn't matter, right? Like if you were like, oh, I'm gonna bet on this even money game because it's Knicks at Spurs or something like that. I don't know. And I was like, no, don't bet on it. I hear the fix is in and it's rigged. And you're like, well, who's it rigged for? And I'm like, I don't know. And you're like, well, I'm just going to keep betting on the Knicks. Like it doesn't. It's just as likely to be rigged in my favor as not. So,
well, but I think what I'm saying is people who get into sports betting to begin with, not people who are just doing it just for fun.
Yes, exactly.
Like, they have convinced themselves that like, no, I know the Knicks are going to win. If everything's a fair game, I know the Knicks are going to win. And now there's a probability that it's not a fair game. Oh, well, if it's not a fair game anymore, I can't convince myself that I'm smarter. And so therefore it's not plus EV and therefore I'm just not going to gamble at all.
And these two things that you're talking about kind of compound with each other, where people that have deluded themselves into thinking that they're winning sports bettors, when in reality they're just people with a dream, they're more likely to make accusations about things being rigged against them when they lose, right? That's the type of person that is most likely to complain about the refs or stuff like that, ignoring like these particular fixing scandals or stuff like that that's been going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the psychology around sports betting is really interesting, and it's going to be really interesting what it does to like the youth of our country coming up.
Well, and I like on the sheet that we have that we go off for our notes, like you asked the question, how many people need to feel like they can beat gambling to get into gambling? And it's an interesting question. I don't know, but I do feel like there's a lot of people who get into it. Think like if you just go onto the Reddit boards of gambling, every week, someone discovers the martingale on there.
And we know this because Adam checks every week on
I
Reddit
check
gambling.
all the time. But I think that's a fascinating thing of, these games have been around for centuries. I mean, literally, right? They've been around for so long. The math hasn't changed. And like a lot of new gamblers think, oh, I found a way around the math of this game. I figured out, you mentioned earlier, Jack, a betting strategy that somehow wiggles its way past and around the mathematical edge. And we all know that that's not true. And they have no idea what finding an actual edge looks like. Like if you listen to Richard Munchkin talk on Gambling with an Edge and you hear his stories of like finding dealers who are making mistakes, or really when the math is messed up on a new game that's being launched, right? There's opportunities there. Are there edges that exist and will continue to exist? Occasionally, the margins are incredibly small, but they're not obvious, right? So I think that's what's interesting about new gamblers, like coming up with a betting system or a style of gambling in terms of how they're betting at a game that's already been solved. And that's, like I said, a characteristic of a new gambler.
I find that to be especially fascinating when they've heard that the martingale actually doesn't work and they've convinced themselves of that, but they're just like, that just means we haven't found the right system yet.
Right.
And so they're like, they've been turned away when they came up with like a martingale style system. They're like, oh, okay, all I have to do is get back to the lab and come out with a bigger, better system that doesn't fall into the same pitfalls martingale does. And then I will have beaten roulette.
Table limits be damned. I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
This kind of goes back a little bit also to our discussion
Spirit
on the
Airlines.
To our discussion on the last episode about, I think there's a big difference between I'm convincing myself that I actually do have an edge or I found a system, or if I hit the button 5 seconds later, I'm going to get that 4 of a kind, versus doing small things that we might actually make ourselves excited to do and like convince ourselves that maybe I have a little bit of luck in me if I just wait till the end of the song to press the button. I think we can add some excitement, but you still need to understand that you're not making a fucking difference.
Yeah, I mean, there's fun superstitions to have, and then there's just plain old ignorance, right? And there's, you'll see this on social media too, of people like, well, I always win when I play 3-0 roulette, so really the odds don't matter. It's like, well, the odds do matter, but it's okay for you to have fun at a game that you like, even if the odds are bad. I make terrible bets all the time too.
Yeah.
But don't delude yourself into thinking that the math doesn't matter, because it very much does.
Or it's the same sort of thing where some people can only understand the concept of expected value when talking about the long run. And I agree that that's a good way to explain it, but I do challenge people to try to explain to someone why like the expected value of your bet is important without talking about the long run, or without talking about doing the same bet over a large number of trials or any of those sorts of concepts, because it is still true. And like Adam's saying, people end up saying things to themselves like, oh, well, obviously 000 is worse in the long run, but I'm just playing a short session, so it might not be worse. And it's like there's some truth to that, but it's mostly just kind of a way to convince yourself of something that's false, right? I think the last thing I have on this is I've been talking about this with one of my buddies a bit, and he is a philosophy professor, and he was telling me about a colleague who talks about like the philosophy of addiction and stuff. And that colleague had been reading the book Addiction by Design, which is a book that from like 2012 that I'd read that's specifically about slot machines in Vegas and how they're kind of designed to make people addicted to them. So I think that's a fascinating read. It's somewhat tangentially related to this story in that my friend Ben was pointing out that there's kind of a sentiment across educated people that in general, they believe the only people who would enjoy gambling in the casino are those that are not smart enough or not informed enough to understand the math or understand like the implications of the math, right? Like a lot of people think that the casino, kind of like the way we talk about the lottery, they're like the casino is a tax on those that can't do math, or a tax on the stupid, or something like that, right? You've heard those types of sayings. And I felt this way myself when I was like an 18-year-old learning to play poker. I was like, oh, those casino games are for idiots that don't understand math because you can't win at them. And now I'm like, well, yeah, you can't win at them, but it's fun. And I think that's kind of interesting to be in that class of people that I think a lot of people assume don't exist, that like you do know the math on the games and you do understand why the math is important, but yet you can still find yourself playing them. And it's kind of a weird spot to find yourself in.
Well, and like oddly, that's part of the reason why I like making some of the bad bets, is because they have such a high return, and that I know I'm smart enough to know that like, yes, gambling is a losing proposition, but I'm also smart enough to know that like, yeah, winning a small bet here or there isn't going to change my day radically, right? If I'm a $25 player at craps, winning 1 point isn't going to make or break my day. But having, the fire bet out there or something like that, or the all tall small, like that can make a pretty big impact on that particular session and really raise my spirits for that session. And, when I leave the table. So I kind of like playing them because it is almost like playing the lottery at a craps table or something like that. And it does impact it more. There's probably some sort of term for that, but
well, and you can know what the odds are on a thing like the fire bet or the all tall small, where people truly don't, and I probably in some sense truly don't understand how astronomically poor the odds of certain like lotteries are, right? Whereas we do know that like people do hit the fire bet. If you play enough craps, you'll hit it. If you play enough craps, you'll hit the all tall small over the course of a weekend, if you play enough. Whereas if you play enough lottery for the rest of your life, you're still never going to win the lottery, right? And so some of these long shot bets, yeah, you'll end up a lifetime loser on them, but it will make your day that one day you do hit it. And there will come a day you do hit it. So there is some fun in that.
And for a fun transition, if we wanted to, my wife is probably the smartest person I know, and she will occasionally play the lottery. And I don't know why, but she's like, well, it'd be fun if we won. I'm like, oh, more power to you. I mean, just don't divorce me right after.
Yeah. Well, the lottery's selling a dream. They're not selling a lottery ticket, right? They're selling you the right to think about the things you might buy if you had a lot of money.
Right.
I wrote a blog post about that for my class when I taught economics, but we can get into that in a different episode. By the way, I just purchased Addiction by Design on Audible. Can you guess how long it is, hours and minutes of being read, Jack?
Jeez. I'm going to go 70 hours.
70? I'm going to take the under. What?
I don't know. I have no idea how long audiobooks are.
It's 14 and a half hours, which is
I was only off by a factor of 5. I guess a lot of it is like footnotes and stuff, and those aren't going to be in there, but it is a hefty tome.
Hey, it was worth it for one of my credits because I have one of those like reoccurring every month, and now I got 4,000 credits on Audible, and I keep forgetting to cancel it.
Well, listen to it 5 times, so you hit the 70-hour mark.
I'm going to have to listen to it so many times to get to 70 hours.
Adam, you should have had to guess. I
took the under.
James was talking like it was going to be a large number, so I had to say the biggest number I could think of.
70 is the biggest number you can think of.
On short notice, it's the biggest number I could think of.
That makes sense.
He's a sophisticated poker player. That's the largest number he could come up with.
70. That's all he could. Mine is 36, but that's just because I only play roulette. All right. Well, I think that's going to be it for the first hour of episode 15 of Handy at the Shandy.
Hopefully it came in right at the 70-hour mark for you guys.
I think it came in right at the 70-hour mark. We hope you stick around for hour 2, where we'll be answering some listener questions. Jack has some quick fire topics for Adam and myself. And then, Jack, you're going to be going to Vegas in a couple weeks, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about that.
And Adam did a great segue into the first listener question we're going to talk about, where we discuss our significant others and whether or not they gamble and how smart we think they are.
Yeah, and whether or not we have them.
Well, yeah, that's going to come up in hour 2, I think.
All right. Again, for Adam the Fraud, Boring Jack, I am TGJames Games, and we will see you in the second hour.
Later.
Bye.